Hey, Jim Toscano here, and welcome to the Monday night live stream. As always, I have a special guest tonight, which I'm very excited about, which I'm going to introduce in just a minute. In the meantime, I just want to mention the companies that I'm passionate about: Sabian Cymbals, Offset Pedals, ProLogic's Practice Pads, Black Magic Designs for all my electronic gizmos that are in the room. Got to hold up a ProLogic's pad because it's good. And they're delicious. They come in different flavors. You got to love it. And also, I just want to mention that this Wednesday, I'm having the Monday night live stream on a Wednesday at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, Eastern Daylight Time, with Billy Cobham. So Billy's with me on Wednesday, and of course he's in Switzerland, so doing it at 7 p.m. on a Monday was not possible. He would be sleeping, and I would just be talking about him. So he'll be there. And then I just want to mention one more thing. Everybody say a little prayer for Jeff Salem, who would be on next Monday's live stream. But Jeff was hit by a car in a hit and run, and so he is healing, and I know he's healing well. But so he's going to be rescheduled, and I'm going to do a replay of Billy Cobham's Wednesday night stream on Monday the 18th. So you get double dose of Billy coming up. Okay, so let's get into it. My guest tonight, I'm going to do his introduction backwards then from what people usually do. My guest tonight has played with such jazz greats as Christian McBride, Chet Baker, John Scofield, Nicholas Payton, Tony Bennett, Wayne Shorter, Joe Henderson, to name a few. I also happen to know that he played with Vince Giordano briefly, who I played with, and Daniel Glass also played with, which we'll have to bring that up at some point. And of course, he's got his new album out that I want to talk about, which is Mike Clark and Mike Zilber, the record Mic Drop. Holy moly. You got to hear this. It is swinging. And, of course, you have to get your copy of the Post-Bop drum book. If you don't have this, you should. And it's available in print and digital. It's a killer book. I've gone through it. There's great stuff in the beginning, even just the descriptions about Mike's life as a drummer. And so, without any further ado, I'm going to bring in Mike Clark. Here he is, ladies and gentlemen. Boom. He's with us. Yes.
Boy, after an intro like that, I'm not... How you doing, Jim?
I'm doing good, man. And by the way, here I'm probably gonna get banned for this, but I'm gonna play a little taste of Monk's Dream. Oh my God. Totally swinging. What a great record, man. I've been listening to that today, and geez, man, just such great stuff on it. And we're definitely going to get into your projects. And of course, the only thing I didn't mention, which is what everybody's always like, hey, man, Herbie Hancock. So you've played with Herbie Hancock in a very big way, and I feel like, you know how like you ever watch a TV show and an actor gets typecast, and it's like, in people's minds, I mean, not in real life because it's not real, but in people's minds, they're like, yeah, man, funk drummer. And like, that's what they know in their heads. And it's like, man, there's so much more. Your drumming is so much deeper. So I want to get into that. All right, now we can say hello. How you doing, brother?
Well, good, man, and good to see you. And I'm really digging looking at that room you're in there, the lights and all of the gadgetry, whatever that may be. I can't see everything, but that looks like a fun room right there, bro. Is that the drum room and the hang and the whole 9-yard room?
This is the drum. This is the everything room. This is the recording room. This is the drum room. This is the podcasting room. There's 2 drum kits. One right there. Actually, that's the student kit right there. And then there's my kit is right behind this thing, and I actually don't have all my cameras on because I'm at the desk tonight. But I have several cameras on the drum set back there, and yeah, man. And we're gonna get your room outfitted just like this, right?
Yeah, the Jim Toscano instant drum room. It's expensive, but it's up in 10 minutes and ready to go. I love it, man.
Yeah. Well, your buddy Dave Garibaldi was one of the early folks that I was helping out with this stuff, and he's got a rocking setup, man.
His setup is great. It's great. And it just, as you guys were kind of, because we're in the Stick People together, but for those that don't know the Stick People, it's David Garibaldi, the great David Garibaldi, myself, the great Lenny White. All these cats are great. Michael Shreve and Greg Rico.
Yeah, man.
And we have different guests on, not just drummers. We've had Stanley Clark and people who don't even play anything. And it was like a talk show, and we just sit there and talk and stuff. But I watched that room improve, and he told me I remember when we all first started, it was like, I don't know, the snare sounds funny, and the micro with this, and it just kept getting better until now.
Nice.
He's Oh man, like very cool.
Yeah, it's super fun, man. But and the Stick People, by the way, folks, look that up because they do some great interviews, and of course, our buddy David Garibaldi's there. But one of my heroes from when I was a kid, Lenny White, is part of that, and of course, Michael Shreve, who played with Santana, and Gregorico, who's another fabulous drummer. So it's such a great blending of minds, if you will, and you guys are all sort of like brothers from another mother in a way. The way that you work off of each other, but it's pretty amazing, man. Everybody check that out.
Yeah, we had Cobham on recently. Billy came on, and anyway, on and on and on. But the one thing is, here's the record that you were talking about. If I may just shamelessly
Yes.
promote the record a little bit, because it is a jazz record, and they don't sell as easily. Although this one's doing pretty good, and we've gotten great reviews. This is the cover,
Yeah.
and it's called Mic Drop, and the band leaders are myself and Michael Zilber. So, drum-led records are that's a bit of a challenge right there. Not the music, but to get somebody to invest in it and this and that and the other. So I always try to. But this one, I feel like it's the first jazz record that I feel like whether one likes what I did or not, it's an honest effort on my part. There was nobody that manipulated me or told me, hey, why don't you play this kind of like a Lee Morgan thing? Nobody said a word. So each tune I just played how I felt. So there it is, like that. So,
Yeah.
and I really dig that. I don't think I made a record where somebody said, well, why'd you kind of play an Elvin thing here or a certain kind of mambo or this, that, the other, which is all of it's good. It's okay to take direction in the studio, but this is really me. So some people are going like, on the one tune, I really liked what you did, but da da da. And I'm like, yeah, bro, but you know what? I liked it, and and I'm standing behind it. And if you don't like it, I'll take your name out of my phone book. No,
But that's what it's all about. I mean, you're bringing forward where your voice is now, and I think that's what's important. It's like this is where you are feeling the music now. That's what it's all about. And the tunes are really cool. You guys have two original compositions, right? That are Zilber originals, right? That you did you co-write those or did he write those?
he wrote those himself. Yeah,
Yeah,
no,
yeah.
I didn't co-write any. I wasn't involved in it. What had happened is I was out in Oakland in the middle of a tour actually, and Michael's a friend of mine. We played together, and part of this tour was we played. Jazz San Jose Jazz, and with Mike, and then I was out there actually with some other guys, blah blah blah, and he just happened to say, "Hey, let's jump in the studio with the band from the festival the other night." And I went and just see what happens. So that's why nobody really gave any direction because we just walked in there and was kind of like, well, what do you want to play? Well, I got something here, man. Okay. And then let's play Falling in Love with Love. That's one of my favorite. How about this? How about that? And so that's why I dig it because it wasn't like, okay, we're going to rehearse and then at letter B, we're going to go into a seven, nothing. We just
Right.
swung.
That's and so that has a bit of spontaneity about it, I suppose, right? And as far as the tunes, you have a couple of Wayne Shorter tunes on there. There's a McCoy Tyner, right? Passion Dance. There's a couple Beatles tunes, right?
Couple of Beatles tunes, yeah. Norwegian Wood and something else.
And Blackbird, yeah.
Blackbird.
Blackbird.
And yeah, straight ahead style. And yeah, Michael did almost all of the arranging except for Monk's Dream. Peter Barchet did Passion Dance and Monk's Dream.
Nice.
Yeah, man, it was great. I have one more, and then we could move on to whatever something other than what records I've made. But these are both out on the charts right now. This is called Freedom Jazz Dance, and this is led by the great bass player Leon Dorsey
Wow.
and great piano player Manny Valera. So it's a swinging record, and there's also, those grooves that are kind of in between straight ahead, in between samba, in between funk, in between this, but they're not any one of those. It's all at once. Well, that's how we played Freedom Jazz Dance, and I'm loving it.
Wow. Oh man. And I'm not familiar with that one now. I will be. So very cool. And wait, Mic Drop came out this year, right? 2021. That also came out recently?
Yeah, we've been making jazz records up at Leon's place for quite a while. And when the great piano player Harold Mayburn, right before he passed, we made this one called, what's it called? Thank You, Mr. Mayburn, with Harold and I, jazz trio.
Wow.
If I may shamelessly, and then I promise we'll move on.
No, it's all good.
The Beatles, Wolf Clark and Dorsey, Michael Wolf, the great piano player, and we took Beatles tunes and played them straight ahead jazz style.
That's great.
All of these that I'm showing you I'm very proud of them because they got rave review, really good review. One guy hated it, but we don't like him anymore either.
There's always one, right?
I mean, you're not going to love everything that people. That's crazy. But Mic Drop, especially, the reviews are like, "Wow, thank you."
Sweet man. By the way, anybody that's in the chat, good evening, friends. People that are in the chat. So if you have any questions for Mike, start putting them in the queue. I'm going to check into the chat like at 7:30. I'm going to pop in and start talking to y'all and let you ask some questions. I already see some of my regulars up in there. Bob Sears up in New Hampshire. Tony Cucina. Hey, man. How you doing, Tony? Down in South Jersey or in Manhattan, whichever apartment you're at. You lucky dude. Larry Rizzo hanging with us. Don O'Keefe hanging with us. So we got a bunch of guys showing up in the queue. And John Gill out in Oneonta, New York, hanging with us. Very cool. And Bob Sears said he just picked up Mic Drop and can't wait to listen. Excellent. And yeah, we're gonna go through the whole story. I mean, I was going through, and of course, I mean, your earlier solo records, which we'll have to get into a bit too. And the catalog is amazing, and the discography that you have is really amazing. I learned just this week that you've played with a whole bunch of people that are not part of the straight ahead jazz scene, right? Including Les Claypool showing up on one of these recordings, and that you played with Brand X back in the day, which was when I was a kid. I was into fusion stuff, and Brand X was on my playlist. So that's pretty amazing. So there's a lot of music, but people go to Mike's website is on the description of this video, as well as his book. There's a link to the Hudson page with his book on it. So make sure that you go check it out. There's a record called Blueprints of Jazz that's really amazing. Retro Report with Delbert Bump, that Oregon record, man, that's amazing. And then the other one I want to mention is Mike Clark, Actual Proof from the year 2000. That's a really funky record as well. So there's a lot of stuff. Holy moly. You've been busy.
A while. As I'm sitting here listening to this, I'm going, man, I'm getting older, man. Listen, I mean, it's like I actually forgot about, like Actual Proof, not from Herbie, but the record Actual Proof. Yeah.
Yeah, the record. That's what I'm talking about. Because, like everybody talks about Actual Proof, the track,
right.
And going back to the Headhunters, but that record, Actual Proof, which that opening track, I wonder if I can get away with this. Let's see. Ah, man. And that tune goes off in other directions, and it's like it's funky and grooving and swinging and all of the above. And man, just check out the Actual Proof album, which is under Mike Clark. And what's funny is today somebody on Facebook, they saw our post, about the upcoming live stream, and they wrote, "I hope we're talking about funk." And I'm like, well, we're going to mention it, but it's not going to be all about funk because Mike's not all about funk. So, and by the way, Dave Clive from the Gretsch Museum Dave Clive's Gretsch Museum in Brooklyn says hello. And he said, please tell Mike that my brother Adam, who's a bass player, saw you with Herbie Hancock at Tanglewood when he was 13 years old and was blown away by your playing. So, Okay, now we're trying to make Mike feel old. What are you doing, Dave? What the heck? But yeah, man.
Well, go ahead.
That's the cool thing. It's a whole community of drummers, right? So everybody's going to give props. And we're a crazy little community, don't you feel?
Oh yeah. Well, you got to drummers who are not crazy. I don't usually care for how they play. There has to be pathos and insanity, and there's always look at all the stuff we learn, teach ourselves to do. That's crazy right there.
Yeah.
And what we do with it, that's I mean, come on, that's a lot of creativity. That's a lot of improv. Your brain is on a different gear probably than not. I don't know about other musicians, but you're using four limbs. That opens up the both channels of the both sides of the brain. So drummers are interesting cats. Especially when they get over the competitive, I'm faster and I can jump higher than you routine. And that's when you start to get to know people. There's a groove. You know what I mean? It's great.
Yeah, man, that's right. And you know what? I think with drummers more so than anybody, and I say this every live stream, so everybody's rolling their eyes, but I go like, there's no bassoon players like all hanging out together going like, hey, man, that lick was really hot. So like drummers come together and we share ideas and we share our passion for it more so than other instrumentalists. Guitar players are turning their backs. It's like it's a different thing. But drummers, we're like a family, and there is always that little nudge of like friendly competitiveness. But
Yeah. I love more than sitting. I don't even try to be cool if I like the drummer. I'll sit right in front of his bass drums. I don't need to be back at the bar acting cool. I don't care.
right,
I go to Lenny's gigs. I sit right down where I can really get it all. You know what I mean? I
nice.
want to hear it, man. I don't want to be back there acting like, yeah, man, I can do that. Who cares? You know what I mean? Like, at this point, like, so what?
Exactly.
I'll play some great stuff, guys. So we're musicians first, and I am anyway. The music is why I play the drums, not the drums.
Right, right. Absolutely, man. It's funny. It's like I'm one of these guys that I'm not that into every detail about a particular drum, like, and
Yeah.
not no disrespect to anybody who is, but like for me, I don't care how many plies it is and this and that and what kind of hard, I want to play, and it's like it's all about the playing, and I'd rather talk about the philosophy behind somebody's playing and what they were playing than what was that stand that you had your Tom, like all the gear. I'm not a gearhead, even though the room looks like that because I present the show and all this kind of stuff, but I'm not really a gearhead. I'd rather just play drums.
Some guy asked Jack DeJohnette, what kind of pedal are you using? And he went, what's the difference?
Nice. It's like
There,
one that works. How about that? And
one works, you know what I mean? Like, come on, man.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, what would you like to, if I don't want to not talk about some funk, if you want to go there too,
yeah,
because I have a lot of crazy experiences and great times with
yeah.
that. So, like, but right now I just mostly play jazz. I don't play too much funk anymore. The bread's got to be really good.
Right. And that's why I want to bring up this first, and then we'll dive into some of the earlier stuff. So, and from an educator perspective, because you teach as well, and I spend a good percentage of my time teaching actually, and I have a book out, and we both have. I said earlier, the A Team. We got Joe Bergamini and Rob Wallace and Rick Gratton on the book. All these great folks that worked on it, and first of all, this book is available on digital too. So if you look at here, I can pull it up. If you look at the app, the Hudson Music app, which is in the middle of our screen right now, you can't see that, but everybody is seeing that. And if you get the book, there's video footage in there, and which there should be. And where's my book? Where is it? Here we go. Oh, here we go. So when you click on read and you go to these pages, what's great is the video, as like with my book and all this other stuff, the video's embedded right here. So if you click on this, just the ride cymbal pattern right at the top of the book, you get Mike playing it. You get to hear his touch. You get to see him playing it. He makes some funny faces. It's awesome. So definitely check out the digital version of the book because the recordings in there sound great, and it's we're seeing it come from the source, which is awesome. So, what prompted you to make this book?
I had been, people are always calling me and asking me about the ride cymbal, the feel, the swing thing. And it's so, as we all know, it's so much deeper than just going splang, blang, a lang, ding, ding, a ding. So I kept getting these calls, and finally I said, "Well, look, man, we're going to turn this into a lesson. I'm going to do some So I started doing some lessons on just the ride cymbal and different language, bebop and post-bop. And of course, if they want to throw some funk in, I'm always cool with that, whatever. But most of this is they're calling me about the jazz thing since I've been making these records. And what happened is I started writing things down so I would remember what to tell people when I saw them the next time. And then pretty soon, one day I looked on the floor and there was about 20 pages of stuff in no order. It's all sloppily written, and I'm not a great transcriber. I just get it down, and that's the end of that. And then I went, wait a minute, and I called Rob, and I said, hey, I got an idea, Rob. I've seen these books on jazz. They're all great, and as the authors are, and I have my own take on the stuff. So rather than me writing what Tony did, what Elvin did, what Philly Joe did, why don't I write what I do? My take on the whole thing. And he was like, that's a great idea. Let's do it. So we started having conversations, and I started sending him, what do you think about this? What do you think about this section? Could this even be called a section? On and on and on. And pretty soon we had a book. That's it. It was real natural. And then there's a drummer friend of mine, Towner Gallagher, who can write stuff down really fast. So rather than me going like, playing an idea and then going like, let's what's the sticking? Oh my God, and he just did it, And another friend of mine, Nucleolo Vega, who can write as fast as you can play it. I don't care how much chops. He's like, okay, I got it. I'm like, are you sure you got it? He's like, yeah, I got it. Go ahead, do the next thing. It's like, so that's those cats.
Wow, nice. And
Wow.
I would say I like that you go into kind of detail about your story in the top of it. Because I'm a book nerd, man, total book nerd. I love reading all this stuff at the top. And so so it's bringing in your philosophy, but also, sort of the lineage of your education as you were describing it, right? And then it goes into the art of listening, creativity. You have one called telepathy, heritage and lineage, all these sections, tuning, stickings. I mean, you're going through everything, right? And feathering and cross sticking and brushes. You even have the brush section, and so it's just a great book. And I think I'm going to book a lesson with you to get deeper insight into the book, so that when I use this with students, I have a better approach. As a person that really appreciates it, I would love to get it right from you, and I think we're going to have to do that. But it's really a brilliant book, and I'm so glad you did it.
Thank you. I'm glad we're getting, yeah, I got a lot of great, I'm still getting, people, hey, what about this page? What did you do there? Blah, blah, blah. So it worked pretty good. It was a good idea as it turned out. Uh, yeah.
Yeah. That second exercise in the book where you're doing the triplet, part of the triplet, the broken triplets against the swing pattern. That was the first lesson Marvin Smitty Smith gave me at the Collective, was that pattern, right? And then foot patterns to go over that. And so as soon as I saw it in there, I was like, I love this, man. It's like home. So, and what's cool is I think, anybody that's done like Chapin's Advanced Techniques for the Modern Drummer, or Peter Retzlaff's book, or the John Riley books, or your book is such a great addition to that. So, and this is going through specifically post-bop, right? The post-bop drum book. So why that?
Yeah, pretty much. I bring a little of the bebop in there, or at least the Philly Joe, Max, not with Charlie Parker, a little later period. I address some of that, but then I quickly move into what I wanted to really talk about, because there's been a lot of books on those guys, and
Yeah. And there is one page where you said bebop vocabulary, and you play the video, in the video you play it, and that's like classic stuff. And maybe that kind of reminded me a little bit of like sort of, Art Blakey, and maybe going back to some early stuff. And you mentioned about your dad bringing home an Art Blakey record for the first time, right? And he had never heard it, right?
He didn't know who Art Blakey was. He just saw this drummer on the cover, and it was either one of these two records. I was 8 years old, so excuse me if I can't. It's either Drum Suite or Son of Drum Suite. But before that, my father was a drummer, so there was always a drum set and jazz records being blasted constantly. But he stopped around 20 years old because he wasn't that good. And he admitted it. He goes, this isn't going to fly. But he always kept his drums and his records, played them all the time. So I was, as a young boy, I was into, Gene Krupa, Zudi Singleton, Joe Jones, Louie, Yeltsin, Buddy Rich, I mentioned, all of those cats, and a couple of guys with Louis Armstrong, Barrett Deems, and I said Zudi Singleton, and
Yeah.
pretty much whoever I could hear, being that I didn't go shopping for my own records. So I just, whatever I could get my hands on from his collection. He had a lot of boogie woogie and all this stuff too. But he brought that home. And when I heard that ride cymbal, I think they played Caravan. It blew, I was only 8 or 9. So my first word, I just remember saying this to my dad. I said, this sounds like Egyptian music. I loved it.
Wow.
And I didn't understand why that symbol, it was a K. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
And man, Art Blakey, I was just like, okay. And I didn't completely get rid of Gene and Buddy and those guys, but they went to the back of the collection and this new record collection started to build. And that's where I ran into everybody else in jazz, from Bird to whatever,
Right.
Max Roach, of course. And then I got going with all this stuff. And it was fun because my dad was learning it with me. He couldn't play the stuff, but he was like, "Man, this is great." So it was cool.
So he was just a lover of the music, and basically his influence kind of brought you to the table, right? Oh, we just got a new subscriber. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. So that kind of brought it to the table for you, right? And I also read that your dad was working on the railroads, right? So you were traveling around a bit, right, for a time, a lot, yeah. And so going to different areas, mostly down south, where you were hearing music, right?
He was a real nightclub, jazz club person. He would get into it. He would flipper of who's playing where, and we would go 3 and 4 nights a week. And I'm like 9 and 10, and my whole life, even when I was already a professional and lived in another. We had the dad thing, but we were also the son and father thing. But we were jazz club, so we knew who was coming, who was in heaven.
Oh man. So now you got to sit in at a very young age, right? So I mean that's pretty astounding. I mean, so almost, you've been thought of as a child prodigy at that time, right? So getting to sit in, what was that like at that age?
Well, every one of these clubs he'd take me to when I was like, from the time I was like 6 years old, I guess, or whatever, all the way through until I got too cool to sit in. Well, when I had girlfriends and I'm 14, he would embarrass me. Hey, let my kid play. And, I'd be quiet. Don't even tell him I play drums, but he would take me to these clubs, and then he would pay the drummer or the band leader $5 or buy the band a drink, which $5 in those days. This is the '50s, bro.
Yeah.
And so they always let me play, and then I was meeting all of these musicians, and when I at 5 or 6, I could play a really good Gene Krupa type solo. I really could. I'm one of those guys that could do it at that young age. Everybody has these different periods of growth. I could play like those guys, man, and and so they would take me around, and it would surprise. The professionals played like slip, so we double back, and I'd be sitting in with them again and again, and pretty soon they started calling my dad sometimes to have me come down as a guest soloist. And I'd play Sweet Georgia Brown and take a solo or this and that. But then I'm starting to get into bebop. So now the Gene Krupa thing is no longer, and so people kind of don't understand what I'm playing, and I'm only 11. How come you don't play the tom toms like Krupa? Yeah. So it's kind of a crazy thing all the way around. It was great though. I
Wow.
met everybody. I played with everybody. I met all the great Louis Primus drummers. I met all those cats. They showed me a ton of stuff.
Oh my God.
Great, great childhood on that tip.
Gotcha. So now, just after all this exposure as a kid, when did it kind of start to happen where it was like, all right, now I'm playing professional gigs, and what were those first few gigs that you got?
Well, I finally moved to Sacramento to live with my mother when I'd been down south and in Fort Worth for a while. And the first gigs I got were trio jazz gigs, or you'd play standards and stuff like that. They weren't hard blowing gigs, but they'd be like uh, dinner houses, a few little jazz clubs, a bar here and there. Nobody cared you weren't 21 to play drums in those days. Nobody ever meant, I don't think, I can't recall anybody ever saying anything about it, you know. And somebody in the band they were all adults, so they would bring me in, talk to the guy, tell him what's up. I'd play the drums and I could play at the same level. By the time I was 14, I was pretty good. And I was playing, so those were the kind of gigs. And then I played some big band, kind of Glenn Miller, kind of schmaltzy, whatever I was working, you
Yeah.
know.
Right. Yeah. Whatever was coming your way, so you're grabbing it. And it's funny. What I was just thinking about what you said about nobody really cared at that time that you were young. Like I had a note that my mom wrote that allowed me, that basically said she gave me her permission to play in some of the clubs in New York City when I was like 16, 15, 16 years old. So I had this little note and I kept it in my wallet. And so if they asked, I would be like, I got a note from my mom, but they would let me play. But I certainly wasn't that young. But that's pretty amazing. So now, from those gigs, now you're playing pretty much regularly, right? It's becoming a regular thing. And then, who's sort of the first name artist that you connected with?
I would say Vince Guaraldi.
Right.
Yeah, I'd say I'm pretty sure that was the first guy that I would consider a name artist. He already had a smash hit out, "Cast Your Fate to the Wind,"
Right.
and so that was the first guy. I played with some well-known guys in New Orleans, but I was just sitting in.
Right.
And but to actually be in the guy's band, that's probably the first guy. And through him, I played with um, um, John Hendricks. Uh, I can't think of everybody right now, so I'm having a senior moment. A whole would come and sit in with us or work with Vince, and I was the drummer. So I would John Handy, that's who I was thinking of,
Right. Right.
and alto player. And he got me going around the Bay Area, and I started getting a ton of years worth of calls after I started with him.
Wow. So you stayed with Vince Giraldi for like a decade, right? You were there for a while.
I knew him as a really good friend, and so I didn't stay a full decade, but on and off our
Okay.
friendship and working yeah, at first maybe 2.5, 3 years
I
straight
gotcha.
through. And
Gotcha.
then, I started getting busy, and if he'd call, then he'd call. But we were always friends, and he would always say, "Hey, why don't you come out and do a week, or why don't you?" And when he passed away, he was on a gig that he had offered to me, but I recommended my friend Vince Latiano, a great drummer, and so Vince had that gig for a year or so before Vince Guaraldi passed.
Wow.
Yeah.
Were you playing a lot of brushes on those gigs?
No, he was a swinger well, sure, but he was a Wynton Kelly kind of swinger. We didn't do too much of the Charlie Brown. Da, 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 da,
Yeah,
da,
yeah,
da.
because a lot of people know him from that later on, right?
from that, you know
Yeah.
what I mean? And so, but he played with Charlie Parker some, and he was like he had a New York kind of East Coast feel, which I don't know anybody out there on the West Coast at that time that had a feel like that. Not in the Bay Area, maybe in LA, of course.
Right, right. And one thing that I kind of skipped, I was just curious, like, did you do any formal study with anybody like in your teens?
Never. No, I'm totally self-taught.
Yeah. I read that you were totally self-taught, and it said something about your dad maybe, had a guy once in a while would show you some things when you were a kid, going to see these different bands, right? So every
Well,
once in a while, the drummer would show you some stuff.
right. Yeah, I get it from those guys.
Right.
Yeah, and like I say, some of the Louis Prima drummers showed me some really cool stuff in the shuffle and this and that. And whenever the drummer was there, everybody seemed friendly to me, and I would ask straight up, "How are you doing this? Was that a paradiddle? What was that? How did you?" Blah blah blah. Because I was so young, they told me.
Wow.
Most
Yeah, that's amazing. And by the way, our buddy Dave Garibaldi was like, make sure you ask Mike Clark about shuffles. And I was like, I said I wrote this document called The Shuffle Evolution, which goes from like early shuffles to really modern kind of fusion and pop shuffles that it kind of evolved into. So you and I could probably go all night talking about shuffles. But
if I had a beer, yeah.
So we won't indulge too much on shuffles tonight, but it's good to know that we both have a love and fondness of shuffles. And I can't remember the track now. I took some notes, but there was one tune. Oh, I think it was on the new record where you were playing. It was a cover, but you were playing a blues, and you had a really nice Chicago shuffle going through that thing. Jab, 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 jab. I forget which tune it was, but I think it's on the new record. Yeah.
It's really. I didn't realize I played a shuffle on here anywhere, but
Wait, let me see where I wrote this. I'll tell you.
but I'm well versed.
Oh no. It was on the other record. It was on that tune Honky Tonk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Got to dog it for a long time in Harlem at the Showman.
Yeah.
So way back, I'll just make the shuffle part brief here so we can move into an area that you'd like to talk about because it's all good. But yeah, I also worked at a blues circuit in Texas. So my shuffle actually, I got 2 or 3 shuffles came from my Texas education because they have it a certain way. I don't know what it is now, but you couldn't just play your regular shuffle. They wanted a certain thing, and even though it's not hard to perform the shuffle, to get it to lay just right the way, it took me a while to deal with that rascal. So I listened to Sonny Freeman, and I went all the blues clubs. I'm like, oh wait, there's something here I need to know about. And I also learned some crazy ways to play slow blues too.
Speaking of the Texas Shuffle, like kind of a lot of the modern blues guys. Well, I guess not so modern blues guys, but it's a quarter note driven pulse up on the top on the ride, real open quarter notes, and then of course the shuffle is living in the snare hand instead of like the double hand sort of Chicago thing. So there's more of just a wide open quarter note up on top. Was it being played that way back then? Sort of with that driving quarter note?
We usually played swing, believe it or not, on the cymbal.
Right.
Real wide swing too. And you could play what they called, now this is of course my learning, so it's not for everybody, it's what I was taught, and it worked. You play the back half of the shuffle, which is just the last two, ta-tap, ta-tap, boom, boom, ta-tap.
Nice.
The hump in it, right? And then you could play kind of a elven cymbal, chang, gang, chang, gang, chang, gang, chang. And then the other, there was a fat boy shuffle where you really bring down, you bury the stick in the snare on every backbeat for a nono, like, it's really up. And then the back door,
Yeah.
Or you could play the whole, you can either be like, I don't know if you can hear that,
Yeah, I can hear it.
That, and I don't even know what happens on the cymbal. Once I start, that stuff starts leaking out of my eye. whole other world. And then another Texas shuffle, the 16th notes were like really together tight, like
Right, right,
cats that know how to do that, or the whole thing will sound like the drummer doesn't know how to play a shuffle.
right.
But those cats could do that and swing the house down, man. They
Holy.
taught it to me, but I can't do it with everybody. You got to have a cat that gets it, you know.
Nice.
Had the shuffle talk. Sorry, I went
We
there. I
we had to. We had to go there.
can't not go there.
So, oh, by the way, so I'm gonna drop into the chat real quick just to entertain a few people. So, Joey Pinto's in the house. Good to see you, Joey Pinto, another drummer from Staten Island. Very sweet, sweet guy. Just saw him this morning. By the way, I just had knee surgery, so I was limping around the park and and just ran into Joey Pinto. Yeah, that's another story for another day. But yeah, healing up, healing up.
I just had surgery too.
Right. So we're surgery brothers. That's awesome.
Just the other day. But I'm okay. Here I am, man.
Thank
Yeah.
God, right? It's not easy, man. I had a knee surgery about 4 or 5 years ago, and the healing process was much easier. This time around, it's actually 5 years later. It's harder. It gets harder as you get older, right? It's like,
I got a
man,
stent in my kidney right now.
what's that?
I have a stent in my kidney. They're taking it out in 2 days.
Oh man, 2 days. All right. Well,
So,
we'll be thinking about you, man.
um, of course, dinner doesn't hurt either.
Yeah, yeah.
I drink good wine. Not a lot. It's expensive. I pay for it.
Nice. Awesome. Well,
Yeah.
I want to mention Rob Glick's in the house. So one of my young students, Lucia, who always has a question. Lucia's from Staten Island. Lucia Rose Seminara. What a great name, right? And her question is, Mike, what jazz drummers inspire you? So maybe we'll because we talked about some of the early guys, but who inspires you now? What jazz drummers inspire you now?
Okay. Well, let's just say this about the older drummers so I don't have to name them off and bore everybody, but almost anybody you can find on Blue Note Records
Yeah.
inspires me now to this very day. Um, uh, Jerry Gibbs is coming forth right now. I've known him for some time. Terry's son. He's an inspiring drummer. Um, uh, Jonathan Blake is an inspiring drummer. I'm going to sneak in a couple of older cats. Billy Hart and Al Foster. They will raise the roof up. They can bring this. It's not chopped. It's not. It's that they bring they. Uh, elevate the room,
Yeah,
elevate the
man.
room, and is a great drummer who I really dig. I have to have uh, my Facebook page open with all these. Uh, I can't think of his name. A Japanese kid that copped all of Buddy's stuff and plays it with Buddy in the picture in the background, and he can actually do it, and he makes it feel and sound like Buddy. And he
Wow.
calls himself, if you go on look for Dr. Tucker on Instagram, this dude will blow you out, man.
Dr.
My
Tucker?
I could go get my phone. I could find his full name. Kasuko, I think. Mm, I will send it to you anyway, and you can send it to your friends who are on this page. This dude can buddy out, and
Wow.
he doesn't sound like one of those technical buddy cats. He sounds like Buddy, man. It's wild, and he even dresses like him with everything. It's kind
Wow.
of totally cop a guy, of course, but you got to admit anybody that can play that stuff, I want to know about it.
Yeah, yeah. Hell yeah. Um,
But anyway, yeah. So like that, yeah.
Sweet. Eddie Everett in the house, and he says he loves playing funk, and he studies Zig, Clyde, Jabo, Tiki Fulwood, Garibaldi, and more. Is there any other bands or drummers that he should be checking out in this genre?
Well, if you go way back, Roger Hawkins, of course, from the Muscle Shoals thing. Um, who's the guy on all the Al Green stuff? Al Jackson. Those
Al
are the root.
Jackson. Yeah.
Um, Sonny Freeman with BB King,
Yep.
and Watts 103rd. I was on a call with him the other day. James Gadsden, the wonderful
James
James.
Godson, man.
I mean, for that man, hero.
He's going to be on the show. He's going to be on the show one of these days.
Oh, he's a great cat too. He's a beautiful cat,
And he can sing.
and he's a good singer.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, I can't think of everybody right now. As far as the young cats, I mean, I'm sure that whoever asked this question knows everybody that I know or that I'm witnessing. I'm trying to think if there's somebody in the back of my mind that really catches my eye and ear on the funk side. But you know who can play some nasty funk? Cindy Blackman. And I'm not talking
Oh,
about
yeah, yeah.
the chop thing. I'm talking about some funk.
Right, right.
She's bad in more ways than just, what you usually think about Cindy. Either you think of her as like really playing some fantastic stuff or burning jazz or something, or rock, but her funk thing with the tight 16th note high, she can forget it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You know,
She's such a great player, man. She's so prolific.
she's wonderful. She's hearing everything and playing great, tremendous,
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, good answer. And of course, I mean, all the James Brown stuff, all the drummers on the James Brown stuff, I think is worth noting. So Noel Brennan says, in past drum education videos on YouTube, you've spoken about how to get the proper sound with a rim shot. You mentioned how you leave the stick down for an extra nanosecond. And he says, what are your thoughts on
That's right.
playing? Yeah.
You want
Say that again. You cut out.
We're a little out of sync. Something happened there, and the connection got funny. So I didn't mean you. Please ask me about the. I know about the backbeat and the nanosecond thing, right?
Yeah, yeah. He was asking about your YouTube video, talking about your backbeat and the nanosecond thing. And his follow-up question was, what are your thoughts on playing rim shot, traditional versus matched?
Well, I don't care how you hold the stick. If you get a nasty backbeat, and if you could get it with either grip, I can get it both ways, so I'm cool. But what I think this at home in the practice room, your fulcrum and all of this type, great. When you're on the gig, do what you got to do. I don't care if you had to hold it like this, whatever it takes to get that stuff out, bruh. Do that. Play for the band and the sound of the thing. Do you want me to show you on the drum set right quick?
Yeah, yeah. Let's do it.
Okay. I'll just. Can you see this?
Yeah, man. Yeah.
You see the snare? That's what you need.
There we go. There we go.
I'm not going to get too deep about this because I have neighbors. But if I use this grip, then. Wait, my drum's going to cave in. Sorry. So. And the same with this grip. I strike, I'm kind of screwing up here with this drum is slipping a little bit. It's tilting like what's going on here. I just hold it down for a second. But even on the complicated, if I'm like even if I'm doing that stuff, after I once hit the snare, I let it kind of sink in just a little bit. And I learned that on an Albert King gig when I was 15.
Huh.
I was playing with Albert, and I didn't even know who he was. And I just knew he was big. And he turned around and said, "Put some bacon fat on it, goddamn it." You know what I mean? So, and I knew what he meant, but I didn't. I played jazz all the time. I didn't know how to do this. And so a guy came up out of the audience and showed me. He went mash. His exact words were, "Mash down on it a little bit after you hit it." So, and I played this way, so I was able to get a stack instead of clang.
Wow.
Hit that rim and let it clang. It's a doom doom clang. But if I'm playing in a studio and they want kind of a fat behind the beat thing, then I play usually with this end of the stick, either grip. I don't care if it's match. The other one, I just kind of screwed up the match grip backbeat when I was playing. But believe it or not, I can do it. And I hit in the center of the drum.
Right.
Right. And then if I want the James Brown thing, I tighten the snares real tight, and I play kind of close to the rim. I don't put this part of the stick way out in the center like I do for fatback. I bring it back some, so I'm getting sort of a clang, but I've got the head tight and sort of dampened so it doesn't clang. It's like you get a nice tight pop. So there's a lot of different ways to do this, and I'm sure another guy would tell you a whole other thing that has nothing to do with what I do. So whatever it takes, but you'll know when you're getting the right sound, and so will everybody else.
Yeah, that's right. Oh, very cool, man. Thank you for doing a little demonstration.
Sure.
In fact, a lot of guys don't like on the show. The only guys that have played have been David Garibaldi, Stanton Moore, and yourself. I think most everybody's just talking, but it's kind of cool to get a little bit of playing in too. So I appreciate that.
Well, the backbeat thing, you almost have to demonstrate it rather than say it because it's kind of, and I have these earbuds in, so I can't quite tell the velocity that I'm hitting it at as if I didn't, but I can hear you better with these things.
Right.
Anyway.
So, and Nick Capullo said, "Wow, love Mike's playing. He's jazzed up the funk." Nice. John Gill says, question to Mike. I studied with Lester Merle. Have you listened to Lester Merle's drumming with Harry James Big Band?
Not only have I know Les very well, and I've known him since 1967. He's brilliant. He's a great drummer. He can play anything. He used to rehearse Buddy's band so Buddy could learn the charts when he was up in Vegas with Wayne Newton. I've known him since he was in Wayne's band. Wow. And I've seen him play all kinds of different jazz with Richie Cole, all kinds of different cats. He can play the whole thing. He can 18-inch bass drum and play small group jazz, very modern, or he can razzle dazzle kind of like Buddy, or he can just stay out of the way and swing. He's a swinging cat, man.
Oh yeah, and he's a sweetheart of a guy. He's super humble and super nice guy. Robert Rockambuto, what's up? More shuffle talk. Let's see. My mom's in here. Hey mom, say hi to Mike, mom. So my mom's hanging with us. Don is telling us speedy recovery, gentlemen, because he knows we're both recovering from surgery. And Noel Brennan just wrote back, woo, thanks so much for the demonstration, and he just bought your new book. So awesome. Cool, man. So now the Bay Area thing, we might as well entertain everybody with that. So how did that start to happen for you as far as, because I know talking to David, he was saying that he heard you playing in a club, and that's kind of how he started to get to know stylistically what that was all about, right? And so speak to that a little bit. Well,
I had moved to Oakland, and I was working as a bebop drummer, and I walked into a place that I didn't know was a club. I was about 20 years old, and I like beer. And I thought, I need a beer. It's hot. I'm a man. I wasn't 21 yet, and I walked into a club to get a beer, and I guess I looked old enough, so the guy didn't card me. He gave me a beer, and we're talking. He said, and I say, yeah, man, and hey, man, or something like this. And he goes, you talk like a musician. I go, yeah, I'm a drummer. And he goes, what kind of music do you play? I said, well, I play jazz and rhythm and blues, and I play several different styles of stuff, but mostly jazz. He goes, we need a trio in here, And do you know any organ players? I said, I'm in an organ trio now. We just got back from Denver. And these guys live right here in Oakland. They're not far from the club. Uh, uh, Actually, it's not quite right. The club was in Vallejo, but we lived in Oakland. And he said, can you start this Thursday? And I said, yes. And we had that gig for three, I always say 4 years, but I think it's more like three and some change. It turned into 4 nights a week in a Sunday session with the big band, and I was the leader for the whole
What?
thing. And it was
Wow.
like how does this even happen to people, right? And on that gig, Paul Jackson, the great bass player, walks in, but he played B3 also. So he came in and sang and played some Ray Charles stuff and swung his you know what off on the organ. I said, "Give me your number, brother." And he went, "Okay." That night when I got home, he was waiting in my driveway with some hashish and a jug of wine because I gave
Oh
him
my
my card
God.
that had my address on it. I'm like, "Yo, man, I don't even know you, but come on in." And we became best friends. And so now Paul and I had a million. He played upright bass, but he also worked at Sherman and Clay Music Store, so he had access to the instruments. So I had a big house that I had at that pretty good size house, wasn't that big. So he brought in the B3 from the Sherman and Clay warehouse and a couple of electric basses. He never played the electric bass. He played upright. And one day he took the electric bass out of the box to play that funky thing you always play on Mercy Mercy. Because instead of playing Mercy Mercy regular, I'll play Mercy Mercy. I'll divide it up, and this is back in the 60s. So, most guys, because it was my gig, who could tell me not to do it on this organ gig? So most guys play Mercy Mercy just but I played it like this. So Paul was like, play some of that stuff for me. And he played electric bass and it went right together. So we started working together. Just the two of us were the band leaders always. And Herbie Hancock heard about Paul and hired him. So then Harvey Mason did the first record with Herbie. And by now, Paul and I are ruling Oakland with an iron fist. We have all the gigs, man. And we occasionally I would play with this band at the On Broadway, and that's where David Garibaldi and I met each other. And he heard me play, and he said, "Man, that blew my mind. You're playing. It's like I can relate to this." Then later, I came in a few nights later, and there was a group. In fact, Paul and I were playing in the club next door, and you could walk from one club to the other. And I walked in, and David was playing with the Tower. I had never heard of them or heard him before. And we were both, Paul and I were off the side of the stage like this.
Wow.
And it blew my mind. And I've loved him ever since. Genius, innovator, funky man, and a great guy. And so, but anyway, so now Harvey Mason is with Herbie Hancock, but as soon as they make the record Headhunters, Harvey's making big bank in L.A. He leaves the band.
Right.
So Herbie calls me because he knows about this thing with Paul and I, and he calls me and he says, "Aren't you that guy that plays that kind of upside down funk?" That's the way. And I said, "Well, man, I'm honored that you're Herbie Hancock, and I'm even talking to you, but you'd have to hear it. Why don't you? I don't know, maybe. I think kind of, but he says, come over and play with me, and I got the gig.
Wow.
He'd never heard the Oakland thing. He'd never heard Garibaldi. I was the first guy he heard do that, and he was like, "Oh man, you come with me." And then he told me right away after 3 or 4 gigs, "I don't want to play with anybody else but you." I couldn't believe that Herbie Hancock saying this to me. Right? I'm like 25 years old, man. I'm like, okay, it was great. So then that style everywhere you went, prior to me getting that gig, everywhere you went in Oakland, David and I were bringing this style to the beat, and all the drummers were doing it. Like when you walked out of one club, in those days there were a lot of working clubs, you could hear that kind of funk drumming coming out of the club three doors down. And you knew which guy it was by the way he was slinging it. It was a tremendous time period of creativity for us, and everybody was looking to do their own thing. I didn't want to sound like anybody. As much as I loved David, I didn't want to sound like him or Harvey. I did want to sound like Tony Williams. We all did,
Right, yeah.
including Eve
Yeah.
and Elvin, and but so I had a double life. Now I'm playing funk with Herbie Hancock, and I'm coming home and playing all jazz gigs at home and no funk with anybody in the
Wow.
Bay Area, an occasional gig. So I got this, so when you mentioned earlier, like actors, getting typecast, one time I did an interview and I was saying, well, I'm not as famous as Leonard Nimoy, but I remember Leonard Nimoy came to New York, and he did Broadway. And so he's up there, and he's a serious actor, right? I mean,
Right.
he's just a great actor, and he's doing all this heavy stuff, and some joker in the audience is like, "Yo, Spock, what's up, man?" Well, that's how I feel. I'm on a jazz gig. My eyes are closed. We're all making up this collage of what we feel is gonna save the world, some dramatic, crazy stuff like that. And some dude is like, "Hey man, hey Clark, play some funk." You know what I mean? Like it's that's not where I live.
Yeah, yeah.
I do live there sometimes.
Right. But, like wrong place, wrong gig to be asking for that stuff, right? Yeah.
Absolutely. It's like, yes, I don't mind doing it at all, especially with a guy like Fred Wesley or Dr. Lonnie, bless his soul, and some of the guys I played with. Now, they get real funky, and you know what they do? They don't play real loud, so you can have all your ghost and stuff really, when I'm playing ghost notes, I don't care about the drum technique. It's like, how are you doing that? Well, okay, I'll show you. It's not that complicated, but it's like seasoning a stew or making gumbo, man. You're adding this, and pretty soon you get that thing balanced, and you get that submarine motor working, and it's funky, man. And it's like, and for me, I mean, I can play regular too, just 2 and 4. But if I'm in a ghost, it's not because I have 5 notes against a ostinato with, that's, man. I don't even think like that.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. It's all about the feel, right? At that point. Um, and actually, what you were saying about a lot of guys, Garibaldi included, right? You guys don't hit that hard. Like a lot of the young cats are thinking, like, oh man, you got to really dig in and play really loud and get really big, enormous backbeats, and like you guys are playing down here, and
Yeah.
it's and that's why it's got the lope that it does, and that's why it swings the way it does, and that's why the ghost notes are as sympathetic and small as they. I always say when I'm talking about ghosting, like be the shaker. It's like the little movement in between the notes, right? So I love that touch that you guys have. It's just really beautiful. Um,
It's not a like a Frankenstein boot thing but it's sometimes if you're playing a stadium or something you got to throw down. I mean you can't not do it or it'll sound like the band's falling apart. I hate those gigs. I like the money, but the reason I started ghosting is I was on an organ gig for a long time. This is way before the one I told you about, where I was the boss. I wasn't the boss on this. And there was a lady singing. She could really sing with a lot of soul. And she played tambourine. And she quit the band. And they got another singer, and she didn't play tambourine. So my body, I didn't do it to be like, it wasn't like a drum thing. It was like I just started putting the tambourine part in, like sort of however I could. I don't even know whether it was a this or a double with a that. I didn't think of that, but I just knew it. So to get that shaker part or that tambourine part, I had to do something. So I don't know. And it's not hard to do.
right, yeah, but that's a great description. I mean, you did it you were missing probably hearing that in the music, and you were trying to fill that void So that's like a really organic approach to playing ghost notes. I love that.
Yeah,
Oh,
and it
very
made
cool.
people dance. I could tell that it made them feel good. You
Right,
know.
right. Oh, nice, man.
Yeah.
My buddy Rob Glick is in here, bass player. We just did a record together over COVID. A lot of people were getting creative over COVID, man. Right? Oh, Les
Also,
is in here. Hey, Les is saying hi, by the way.
Lester Merle,
Yeah, yeah.
is Les here?
Yeah, he's here, man. He said, thanks, Mike and Jim.
Yeah, what's up, Les?
Right,
All
Les.
right.
Thanks for hanging with us, man. One of my young jazz students, Jonathan Schneider's in here too, just popping in for a bit. He studies up at City College with Carl Allen. Yeah, great young drummer. Very cool.
Carl's a hell of a drummer too, man.
Oh
Holy cow.
yeah. You know, the first thing I heard him on was this Jackie McLean record, and I'm trying to remember the piano player Hotep. Uh,
Hotep, I used to play with Hotep a lot. Yeah, Cecil Bernard.
oh my God, man, that record, Jackie McLean Dynasty, and Renee is on there. It's Jackie McLean and Renee McLean. It's a really interesting record, and that was the first time I heard Carl Allen personally. But I was like, whoa, this dude's serious.
You know, Hotep and I used to play in Woody Shaw's band with Bobby Hutcherson for about a
Really?
year at a club out west called the Both And Club. And we
Wow.
played a lot of gigs, and even Joe Henderson, I'm name dropping here, but these are the cats that were on the gig.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
was a kid. I don't even think they knew my name. They were like, yeah, you're 3, 4, hit it.
Play
And
drummer.
yeah, exactly. But Hotep was on that gig, and we became friends.
Wow. Holy moly.
Wow.
I mean, like you say, it's really not name dropping. You're just talking of the personnel on the gig. You know, it's like, you know, name dropping is if you didn't play with those guys and you were just dropping their names. You know.
Yeah, I'm not lying. I can lie a little bit.
And you played with Christian McBride, right? And
Quite a bit,
John Scofield. Um,
very much.
yeah, yeah. Um, how was that? So when did Brand X happen? That happened after Herbie's gig?
Yeah, it was a pretty interesting thing. I, Herbie's band was becoming more straight and more commercial, and pretty soon, even though it's Herbie Hancock, and when you mention his name right there, it's like, whoa.
Yeah.
It brings up Miles and Tony. That's the first thing most of us think of, the whole nine, you know. And but now we're getting like tum, cat, boom, boom, all night, and
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
sound like a band that needs a singer. Nobody's hard. The only guy that solos now is Herbie. Before we were making up all this crazy stuff.
Yeah.
Now we're playing time, and I'm young and want to show people what I can do. You know, my heroes didn't just play straight time. There's no, now at this age, I can play some straight time all night. If it's swinging, I'm cool. But you know, I'm 25 years, 26 years old. So, and my friends are like Lenny White and those guys. They're all like, you know, I'm like, oh man, I'm not going to get left out. Sorry. So I was becoming unhappy. And Hancock is such a sweet guy. He dug what was happening, you know. So then I went to play with Eddie Henderson. Now dig this for a stroke of luck. I left the band and I went to play with Eddie Henderson in San Francisco. There was a 5-night-a-week gig at a club called Christo's that lasted for 11 and a half months. A jazz gig, not a funk gig, you know, acoustic jazz. And on this gig, many times would be Pharoah Sanders. And Joe Henderson was a friend of Eddie Henderson. So we all kind of knew each other, but Joe would show up a lot, and Julian Priester, Papo, the great trombone player from M1DC, and then the great Eddie Henderson on trumpet. So now I'm playing straight ahead jazz, and we're going for it, man. It's no holds barred. This is the early '70s. We're killing. Well, we're trying to. And so I'm on that gig, and we went down to the Lighthouse a couple of times, and this and that, and then all of a sudden, boom, the gig's over. They sold the club. We're done. You know, oh
Wow.
no, what? And I mean, I really learned how to swing and play, really play the language on this gig because I couldn't just, it wasn't about being a badass drummer. You had to play the stuff. These cats knew.
Yeah.
So it was training for me. It was, they'd be like, man, you're playing too loud and too much. So then a guy called me in the middle of the night and said, I'm from this band called Brand X. I didn't know who Phil Collins was. I didn't listen to any of this stuff. I didn't know who any of these cats were. We want you to fly to New York and play fusion with us. We're a fusion band. And I'm like, wow, I've never played any of that stuff. I don't even think I have a drum set that big. They were like, don't worry about it. We'll get you whatever you need. And we're auditioning all these cats. So I go to New York. Now I'm a swinger now. I get there and I hear all these drums like, and double bass, and everything. And I'm like, man, they're not going to like me. I can play fast, but it's jazzy stuff. It's not this
Yeah.
kind. I never ever played in a rock band, even in a garage rock. I never played do 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 do. And I never had this, and I didn't care for it either, and I still don't. But I played, and they hired me, and I'm like, I called my
Wow.
girlfriend. I'm like, you're not gonna believe this, because I was glad they just brought me to New York. I went to see Dave Liebman and some of my friends.
Yeah.
And Liebman also was in this band with Eddie Henderson for a while. So, I would get to hear some of the New York drummers and what they were doing. So this is cool if I just even stay in the Mayflower Hotel. Mayflower and have a taste and act important. I don't care if I get this gig or not. This isn't my music. They hired me.
Right.
So I have to learn all this music, and it's all 15 minus 3 over 7 and I'm like, oh man. And I'm like, can't we just play a shuffle? So I learned all this difficult music. I did it.
By ear?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because they didn't write anything. They gave me a cassette. And I'm like, and learning this, and there's a million parts. Anyway, I figured it out, believe it or not. And then I dug it. And we went, and so now dig this. So now I'm like, yeah. So now I'm one of these cats, playing. I'm like, oh yeah, this is great. I love this stuff. And then so we're going to do our first record, and we do it at Ringo Starr's house in Ascot, England.
Wow.
Ringo bought John and Yoko's house, the house from the video Imagine. Do you remember that video?
Yeah.
White piano was still in the front room. So they're like, hey, we got this guy from Herbie Hancock on drums, so let him choose whatever room he wants, because they all know each other. So I'm looking for the bedroom that I want to stay in, and here's a big bedroom, and it says John and Yoko on each side of the bed, and there's a little thing that you flip, what I thought was going to be a light. So I'm like on John's side of the bed, and I flip this thing, and these shutters automatically open, and there's a giant Tyrannosaurus made out of something with its mouth open and teeth and fangs and shit looking right in the bedroom window. And I'm like, this is my room. And we stayed there for 2 weeks, and they had these cooks, and Phil Collins came. I didn't even know who he was. And they hit me to who Phil Collins was. And we made these 2 records, which I really dug making. And I played some stuff with Phil too. He's a great cat. And we toured for about a year. So that was and then I went back to what I was doing before.
Wow. So like,
I went back to the Bay Area and played some
that's so
bebop
funny.
with whoever.
So how long was the touring with them? A couple years?
Then I moved to New York,
And then you moved to New York.
about a year and a half. And then
Yeah.
the management and them had. Then I went back to Oakland. I thought, after my gig with Hancock, these cats were so laid back, nice musicians, but it was like, cha-ting, tang, choo, choo, bang, shoo-kiki, blang. And I'm like, I can't do this. So I went right to New York, and I've been here ever since.
Oh my God, that's amazing. Wow, that's so funny. So I mean, what a crazy journey, right? I mean, what a crazy musical journey that is. Whew. All right. So I got some questions,
Sure.
and I'm just trying to see if there's any Oh, I was going to ask you one other thing. What's it like playing with Charlie Hunter?
I love playing with Charlie Hunter. He's funky. He got a nasty shuffle, a wicked hook, and he can swing too. He can play changes, and he can play anything. And he's real funky though. And he
Yeah.
plays good drums. He plays gig-worthy drums. He could play a gig, and he's fine.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so when he plays with you. He plays with the heart of a drummer. He's aggressive but not obnoxious. It's nice.
Have you done the duo thing with him?
I've done all kinds of playing with him. All
Yeah.
kinds.
Yeah.
Quartets, this, that, and the other. Yeah.
Yeah. He's an interesting cat, man. I really dig his playing. Oh, very cool. All right.
Crazy cool, man. Charles, he's a serial killer.
What? But he could play drums, right? He could play drums.
Plays good drums, man.
Yeah. Oh, very cool. All right. So, and as far as your records, how many do we miss? We brought up a few of them. Carnival of Soul.
Yeah, you missed Carnival of Soul, Indigo Blue with Christian McBride and
Right.
Randy.
That's live. Is that the one from the Iridium?
It is.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
is.
Cat swinging. The Funk Stops Here.
Paul Jackson and I, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Kenny-
Yeah, so for you funk fans, that's a very funky record.
That's my favorite of all of the funk work that I've ever done, other than the track Actual Proof off of Herbie's record. The rest of the stuff on Thrust was kind of pedestrian. They were like, just keep time, don't play all that stuff.
Right.
They let me out of the cage.
Where's my list? All right. So, oh, and one thing I wrote down that I want to ask you is, from your point of view, and maybe it doesn't matter, because maybe it doesn't matter, but there's some talk about, like, is it funk or is it just something that's funky? So do you see a difference from genre to feel? Like the genre of funk, and then there's like just music that's funky, right?
Well, that's a great question. I'll tell you why. In the old days, when I was young, there was no such thing as play some funk. Nobody ever said, let's get together and play some funk.
Right.
But were all jazz gigs. But if they said play something funky, then you were probably going to be asked to play something out of the Horace Silver bag or book or Cannonball.
Right.
Or just put some more grease on it or make it more filthy than you already are, or something like this. But it wasn't like play. Even at the beginning of James Brown, I used to go see him when Melvin Parker and those cats were playing.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody called it funk. It was just like, yeah, they're getting funky.
Right.
And then it became the genre funk. But to me, all of it should. I don't know about should and shouldn't, but what I like is if it's swing, it should be funky. Nasty quarter note, dirty swing. I love that. Clean, polite, well done swing with very clean technique. Man, I don't want to pay to hear that.
I got you.
It doesn't make me want to have a beer or anything. It's just kind of like, wow, he's very good. Not.
Make
I
it
want
swampy.
yeah.
Swampy.
I'm also from that generation where that's what our training was like. I'll just say this: I played in a big band for a long time, and the reason they hired me was because I could swing pretty good. So I would play the dirty Sam Woodyard kind of tang chang, and I could play the figures. I could read the figures. So I was in this band for quite a while. And one day I was on my way to the rehearsal, and if I may, this was in the late 60s or maybe around, Les, if you're still here, this is probably around the time that you and I met. And so I smoked a joint, and I'm listening to the jazz station on the way, and they played. It's the first ECM record I ever heard, and I heard Jan Christensen playing drums, and he was doing all of this colors, like the tempo would be here, but he was like ting tick 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 tick, whatever, and I'm like really grooving while I'm driving. I'm like, yeah, man, this is great. Now, okay, so I get to the gig, to the rehearsal, and this band is in the hood. This is in Oakland, out in the avenues, and another drummer, great drummer, Gaylord Birch, him and I shared the drum chair. So Gaylord was there. So I came in and I thought, and these cats were like right out of Basie. So they wanted that big beat. And so I'm going to show them my new hip John Christensen stuff. So they're playing like Shiny Stockings or something. I'm like, and the guys, the band leader, Joe Askew, stops and he goes, Mr. Clark. He goes, if you can't put no more stank on it than that, why don't you go to the bar and get you some warm milk and let Gaylord play? Oh man, I crawled off the stage. Oh man, I was destroyed. So that's the school I'm not the dirtiest, swingingest, funkiest, but that was the idea. You feel me? So I'm still kind of stuck with some of that, and I still, whatever, you know.
Yeah, but it's kind of funny. It's like, where your heart is and where you play from is probably, at that time, maybe you're hearing some new things and going like, yeah, that's interesting. And then but really when you come back to it, it's probably more of that straight, dirty, swampy kind of thing coming from, your heart and soul, so yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
By the way, Matt Patel is in here. He says from the soul.
Wow.
And Les is still here, and he said, "I'm here, baby."
Okay. I heard Les playing with Wayne Newton at a club. I can't think of it, but the Temps had played there. The Temptations had played the night before, and this is in maybe 1969 or 70. And my friend Pat Houston, a great trumpet player who played with Buddy, and he was a good friend of Maynard, said, "Man, you got to hear this cat Lester Merle. He's killing." I'm like, all right. So I knew he was playing this gig. Somebody had told me, Vince Latiano, a great drummer and a dear friend, said, "Man, that guy you're talking about, Lester Merle, is playing tonight." So me and another buddy of mine went over to hear him. So here's Les playing with, it's a big band. He's playing with Wayne, and they're doing this Wayne Newton stuff. But Les is blowing his butt. He's kicking butt and playing all kinds of great stuff, and even some Tony stuff, on the Wayne Newton. He's playing his ass off, and it was like great. And so then I met him that night, and I'm like, come on over to my crib tomorrow, and we'll hang out, and he did. So we became friends. He's a great drummer, man. Shoot.
He said Bimbo's was the club.
Bimbo's. Thank you. Yeah.
Oh my God.
Him. From after Sonny Payne left, Harry, I think then Les came in. Is that right? Afterwards, right after Sonny, is that correct?
I think he'll let us know. It's like a little delay. It'll come back. Yeah. Oh man. Well, yeah, he's not back at us yet, but we'll see. I'm gonna ask you a couple of things. So and by the way, I took a bunch of notes on some of your records. And I was just writing like the way you treated Topsy from Retro Report from that record. It almost had like a Green Dolphin kind of thing. You guys were switching out of grooves, right, on that tune, and I love that. I thought that was really fun. And the kick sound was really punchy and low, like compared to, sort of the more straight ahead stuff. Like the kick sounded, like doom doom, and that surprised me a little bit.
I walked into a studio with Delbert Bump. We didn't know we were making a record. Once again, he was like, "Hey, let's go play some stuff." And there's a studio in Santa Rosa, Northern Lights, right around the corner from this place we like to eat. And I'm like, "Do they have drums?" "Yeah, you got drums." So those are the drums. And then I said, "Let's play Topsy as a tribute to Cozy, but let's change it up."
Yeah.
And he was sure. So then we liked what we did, and I sold it to, I guess, Rope-A-Dope. Anyway, whatever company they took us on.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Ah, very cool. And the other thing I wanted to mention is you have on a couple records you kind of do a reprise of a tune. So like on this record you did the tune Chicken, and then later on the record you do more Chicken.
I have no excuses.
You can't have enough chicken, right?
Yeah.
And Deep in the Inner City, that was like real straight ahead. But then the High Heel Sneakers kind of had like a meters kind of thing happening, which was kind of cool.
Well, that's actually an Oakland kind of thing. Uh,
Ah,
there's more than one. Oakland funk had a bunch of different ways of looking at it, and some of it does sound a little. Well, I guess it all comes from New Orleans anyway. So I guess
right.
at the end of the day, you're correct. But, we used to play uh, on the Chitlin circuit together, me and Dilbert, and we would
Ah,
play with some of the people from the Red Fox Show, all kinds of great artists. And he was the organ player, and I was the drummer. And we used to play high heel sneakers way back then, so we tried to give it a different, just hey, let's play sneakers like we used to when we were kids. All right, count it off. So that we
oh, that's great. That's great. And that Bill Evans tune, Periscope. You guys did that, and I wrote down more down tempo and swampy than like the way Bill Evans trio played it, right?
we're
So
different. We're definitely different people. And Bill,
just a little bit.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, man. All right, cool. So this is the speed round. Ready? Um,
Hey, gotcha.
and some of the things I'm going to ask, I'm going to go through drummers first, because, but these are just for whatever comes to your head first. When I drop a wow, I said that backwards. A drummer's name. I said a number's name. When I drop the drummer's name, you just whatever comes to your head first. So Tony Williams,
Genius.
Jack DeJohnette,
Brilliant.
Lenny White,
Swing.
David Garibaldi,
Funk.
brother from another mother,
Who's the next guy?
Michael Shreve,
Guts. Grit and guts.
Philly Joe,
Poetry.
nice, James Gadsden, James Gadsden,
The truth. Yeah, our connection broke down for a minute though, but I heard James. I would say the truth.
The Truth, nice. What about Zigaboo?
Original.
Well said, well said. Clyde Stubblefield,
The Bible.
nice.
He encompasses. There's a lot there.
Oh,
I
hell
mean,
yeah.
you know what I mean? Like
How about Jabo?
swing and funk.
Oh yeah. How about Bill Stewart?
Intellect.
Yeah, yeah, he's a bit. I would say that about John Riley too. Right, real intellectual. How about Max Roach?
The daddy.
Nice. All right, so the first concert you attended, now that was clubs probably for you, but like the first big artist you saw as a kid.
Louis Armstrong.
Wow. See,
James on drums.
see, a lot of people can't say that, man. First drum you owned.
Gretsch Broadcasters.
Woo! You hear that, Dave Clive's Gretsch Museum? First gig, we kind of got that. First drum hero for you, like where you were like idolizing. Was that Blakey?
Zooty Singleton.
Cool.
I was 4 or 5, but he blew my mind. That was the first guy for me.
Worst gig ever or weirdest gig ever?
Can I do a little follow up after I tell you what it is?
Totally.
All right. About 1968, this guy has a country and western band at this nightclub that Paul Jackson and I used to play jazz and funk in. And it pays $250 a week, and they need a bass player and a drummer. And it's only for like 4 or 5 weeks, but it's $250 cash in 1967. So we take the gig, and it's a country gig, and I'm ready to kill myself on the first night. I'm like, this is not worth it. So in today's world, this is not going to be a story that everybody's going to appreciate.
Right.
So Third night, I tell Paul, I can't do it, bro. And Paul's like, I'm getting ready to lose my house on the GI Bill. We got to do it. You can't leave. You can't leave me here by myself. And I'm like, and these cats are like, well, in fact, remember that thing about uh, uh, the guy, the green grass back home? Dear old mama, papa, and somebody. And anyway, when I get to the green grass back home,
Okay.
well, story ends, he's on death row and they're going to hang his ass. And I didn't know this. I just think it's something I've been hearing on the radio. But I'm so stoned when I'm doing a gig. I have my eyes closed. It's just awful. And the guy's singing it, and I realized what had happened. And at the end, I put the sticks down and stood up before the song was over. It blew my mind.
Oh my God.
But here's the other story. Couldn't after the first week, I couldn't take it. So I went to the phone and I called the fire department. I said, I don't know if I should be telling you this, but I saw a guy, I overheard a conversation in the bathroom about a guy that said he had a cigar box with dynamite in it and all taped up. Now he's probably just talking, he's probably lying, but I just thought I'd tell you. Click. So then we're up there like bop, 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 and it's a 4 set gig in those days, 4 sets. And the fire department comes in with axes and the whole thing and emptied the whole club out. And this is a huge club, it held 800 people, and everybody's in the parking lot. And Paul's like, Paul and I are sitting in the car cooling it out, and Paul's like, you did this. Did this. I couldn't take it, and then finally I quit.
Oh my God. Did you get somebody to fill in for the rest of that so Paul could finish the gig, or did he bail with you?
He came a couple of days later, and he went. I said, "What are you doing here tonight?" He went, "I quit. I couldn't take it."
Oh my God.
Oh, so that's the worst gig I ever played in my doggone life.
That was a very good story. I enjoyed that. Uh,
One time, a guy, and we're playing in Tonopah, Nevada. I'm sorry to interrupt. This will be worth it. There's a payoff here. And this guy and his wife that we're working for, they're singing "I Left My Heart in San Francisco," and they're cursing each other out on the stage. I left my heart. I'm gonna whip your ass when we get home. And she'd be like, "In San Francisco, touch me, you bastard." Da da da. And they turn around so only the band can hear this. So the saxophone player takes a solo and he grabs her and they go into the dressing room off the side of the stage and you hear all this cursing and crash, bang, pow. And then he comes out without her and his hair is all over to one side. There's scratch marks on his face. His tie is all torn up. But here's the brilliance of it. As soon as the tenor ride was over, he came right back at the top of the tune. I left my heart.
oh my God.
Second worst gig, although it's fun to tell that story, man.
Oh yeah. Oh,
Oh boy.
how come they didn't have cell phones back then getting the video of this whole thing?
Great, yeah.
Oh my God. All right. So I'm not going to hold you much longer. So you're a New Yorker, and so here's a non-drumming related question. And maybe, we'll have a difference of opinion on this, as most drummers do. Best pizza in New York.
Yeah, I can tell you right now where it is.
All right, what do we got?
Right across the street from the club Smoke,
Yep.
105 in Broadway, right? On the opposite side of Broadway now, the east side of Broadway, between 105 and 104, there's a new pizza joint right there. I don't know the name. It's in the middle of the block, and nobody can go in and sit down. They hand it to you through the window.
Oh wow.
And like I come from an Italian family also, and so I'm not easily impressed when everybody says, "Oh man, this is the best pizza you ever get." Even in Italy, I'm like, "Yes, all right," and this is the best pizza I've ever put in my mouth. And a great saxophone player, my dear friend Donald Harrison, we play together a lot. He's the one that found it, and I'm like, all right. And he goes like, "Michael, I know you. Go over there right now." It actually blew my mind, man.
You,
So
you don't-
that is a different pizza experience. It's not just the slice; they're doing something to it.
right across from Smoke.
In between on the yeah, across from Smoke, but in between 104 and 105, right dead center in the middle of the block. You can't not miss it. If I go on Google after this is over, I can find the name of the place. It's killing. That's the best pizza for me.
There's actually a pizzeria in New Jersey that does the same thing where it's like out of a house, but it's in a commercial area, and you go around to the back of the house and they put it through the window to you. It's really crazy. Maybe it's something about that going through the window thing. Um,
Is it great pizza though? Is it killing?
yeah, supposedly I haven't been there. My sister went there with her husband, and they said it was amazing. It was like the best pizza they ever had. So who knows, man?
You know that place on the corner on West Third, down from the Blue Note at the end of the block. It's been in there for 8,000 years. That
Yeah,
nasty, funky joint.
yeah.
Where it leaks oil, and you probably have a coronary, a thrombo slice. I love that pizza.
It's the right thing at midnight, right?
It's like this. It leaks through the napkin. You're like, ooh. But man, there's something about the way they do it. It's cool. But this other place on Broadway is like, those are my two favorites.
I'll tell you when funds were tight and I was rehearsing up on 38th Street in the music building, 38th and 8th, Dollar Pizza's across the street. That place, Dollar Pizza. That pizza was always good because it's so fresh. It's $1. Everybody's just buying slice, 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 slice. So if you're on a budget, that's pretty good pizza.
Is it still there?
I don't know if it's still there. I haven't been out that way in a little bit, but
Okay.
but
Okay.
I think it was. I think it's up until maybe at least a year ago. It was diagonal from the music building. It was over on that corner.
I'll look and see when I go that way. Okay.
Oh man. Well, this was fun, brother. This is such a great hang. You've been so generous with your time, and I really appreciate it. And I love everything that you've been doing. And the new record is swinging as all swing can be. And this book is awesome. And I'm going to book that lesson with you because I'm going to get some firsthand dope on the book from you. And yeah, man. So I really appreciate you taking the time.
I'm honored, man, that you called me, and this has been a blast talking all this crazy. I hope I didn't get too wild for everybody. I mean, certainly if they're all drummers, I didn't get wild enough. What am I talking about? You guys? But I really enjoyed it, and it was fun reliving some of that stuff. And it's another creative moment in my life. So thanks for the opportunity to, yeah, man, thank you.
Absolutely. And do you have some dates coming up that you want to mention?
You know, I do. They're on my website. I'm doing. I'm going out to California, and I'm doing Bach Dynamite and Dancing. I'm doing San Francisco Jazz. I'm doing Kuumba, with this band from the actual record itself, from Mic Drop, with the Mic Drop band, and then I have some clinics out there. One at the jazz school, one at a college, Los Medinos in Pittsburgh, California. And then I go on the 19th, I fly to Seattle, and I'm doing the Royal Room,
Oh, wow.
jazz joint up there. And then I'm doing West Coast Drums, a clinic the next day. And then I got a bunch of students, like an all day, don't have lunch student drum privates.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, where you're just in there all day, like so that ought to be like interesting at this age. But yeah, so I got a nice run coming up. I just played with Eddie Henderson and Donald Harrison in the quintet 2 nights ago at a place here in New York in Avenue C called New Blue,
Oh, yeah.
and um,
Wait, you got Smalls coming up this week, don't you?
on the 14th with me and Mike Zilber to promote this record at Smalls.
Yeah, yeah.
Then I'm playing Smalls again with Don Braden and Joris Tepe on the 17th,
Yeah.
and I'm in Shanghai in New Jersey, in Madison, New Jersey on the 16th with Joris and Don. And
Nice.
John Davis on the piano, who is worth knowing about. John Davis on the piano. Check this cat out, man. I mean, really
Wow.
swinging. McCoy, Herbie, bebop, post, everything.
Nice. And Birdland coming up on November 1st.
That's the Mike Clark show. That's with my gig, and that'll be John Davis, Leon Lee Dorsey, the great bass player, and um, Jaleel Shaw on alto, And Leon Dorsey is also will be playing the 14th with the Mike Clark Mike Silver Band, and this is Leon right here.
Yeah,
Mark,
yeah.
who's got a hell of a track record, and him and I are making jazz records. He's got a studio built into his place, and we're getting ready to record with George Cable's coming up here pretty soon.
Wow, awesome. So many great dates coming up. So go to drummermikeclark.info/tour, and you can get all the tour dates. But just go to his website and check out everything. The discography's there. His bio's up there, and the link to the book. So order the Post-Bop drum book. And man, this has been super fun. Maybe we'll do it again sometime. We'll get both you and David in here together.
That would be great. That would be great. Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
He's a dear friend, and I've spent a lot of time with the stick people online, so we can really hang out online very comfortable together.
absolutely.
History with him that we didn't talk about going back to Oakland too. That's
Right.
just area that you know.
Well, we'll have like a drum discussion and wine tasting.
Matter of fact, right now I'm going to go taste some of that J. Lore that I got sitting in my cupboard in the other room.
Sweet.
Hey, all you drummers out there, if you're still here, I love you guys. Thanks for coming out. Thanks for having me. It was, once again, on the real side, it was a complete honor. Always.
Much love to everybody that hung with us tonight, and we're going to wrap it up. Don't forget it, Billy Cobham's on the show Wednesday at 11 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time. Going to be super fun, and we will definitely see you on the next show.
Over and out. Okay.